up, everyone? It's Ajax here. Today I want to talk about a new enemy in Halo, the Banished, and a major problem that everyone is either ignoring or hasn't noticed. And we'll get right into that. Without further ado, it's showtime, gamers. I'm extremely excited for the Banished. In my opinion, the Covenant was not a very good enemy in Halo 4 or 5. I'll talk about that more later, but right now we're purely talking about the Banished. So I want to let everyone know this is just not hating on them because they're new. I think there's actual legitimate concerns that if 343 don't take in consideration these problems, they're just going to turn into the Covenant, a boring generic enemy. I don't want that happening. I think they got a lot of potential to be a great enemy. So to provide balance in this video, I'll name one negative thing I see about them and one positive thing I see about the Banished. I think it's fantastic that the Roots are taking on a front and center role, considering we haven't seen them since Halo Reach, if you don't count Halo 2, which introduced the Banished. But I love that they're mixing up the rules that the Brutes were also shown to be. Beforehand, they were just mindless brutes that would rely on pure bronze. But this shows them that they're more. That they can think, they can innovate weapons and vehicles, that they are a legitimate threat. Which kind of ties into one of my problems that I'm starting to have, is that they're losing their old identity. I don't see them having many similarities with the old Bungie Halo Brutes. They don't go berserk, and they don't really seem like they're inclined to anger like they used to be. I don't want them losing everything that once made them iconic. I really do want the Brutes to expand what they are, instead of erasing what they once were. This is very important to keep them interesting, so they don't feel like a skin of the elites or turn into a generic heavy trooper / commander of their troops. I do believe it's possible that they can just turn into a rebranding of the elites and the Covenant. After all, there's very many similarities to weapons and vehicles, and the type of soldiers under their command. To keep this from happening, the Brutes need to act differently, and play differently from the elites. After all, they're two different species, and they should act nothing alike. This is the way it's always been. And Bungie has expertly demonstrated this in both gameplay and story, as the Brutes can always be a bit hot-headed, rushing into situations, and they can be quick to anger, demonstrated by the gameplay, but then going berserk if they take too much damage. And there's always a story that shows the differences between them. That they're extremely obedient to their leader. Even when shown evidence that they were wrong about Halo, they chose to be loyal to the Prophets. This is very different than the elites, have always been shown to be smarter and much more tactical, and have a strong sense of honor. So showing these differences in big and small ways is important to make sure that the Covenant and the Banished just stay differently and have individual characteristics that reflect the species. I think 343 could really add some things too that are in line with both their characteristics. For example, in the gameplay, you may have to fight the Brutes in front because they're a bit hot-headed, so you face them first, while the elites hang back, so you have to face the Grunts and the Jackals before you can defeat them. And balancing could be a bit different too. Maybe get one higher ranking elite compared to a bunch of lower ranking Brutes, like they're banging together to make a pack. This is just an example of how 343 can expand the Brutes while keeping them in character. I'm definitely for them adding depth to the Banished, but I still want them to be recognizable to older fans. Okay, another problem I see with the Banished is that they don't seem to have that many in numbers. They seem more towards like a ragtag group than an endless swarm. They don't seem to hold any planets or have a very big fleet, and they tend to get by scavenging off Covenant weapons and vehicles. The only space we see them occupying is the current war zone. Now they did occupy the Ark, which is huge, but they did rig up teleporters to help them navigate relatively quickly. So they're allowing a small force to occupy a much bigger area than they normally would be able to. And also at the Ark, they only had one ship. Now, it was a relatively big ship, but every single fleet we've seen up to this point had their biggest ships escorted by dozens of smaller ships. So comparing this to every other force, they seem very small. This could be a great time to show how they're different than the Covenant, that they don't have endless resources and manpower. It's just up to good leadership and talented soldiers. But then when you compare it to both the UNSC and Cortana forces, even without the planets she just conquered, they don't really seem to have the numbers to be a threat like they need to be. But the lore is still being written, so this can easily change before Infinite comes out. But on the extremely positive side is that the leadership that the Banished have is awesome. The first time we see Aatrox, he takes down 3 Spartans effortlessly. He's shown to be extremely powerful, much more so than any brute we've ever seen before, even Tartarus. And he's much more intelligent. He's the villain you don't want to fight for all the right reasons, and I'm extremely excited for the boss fight we'll definitely get with him. Because there really hasn't been a good boss fight since Halo 2, with maybe the exception of the Warden Eternal, which is debatable on whether or not it was a good boss fight. My personal opinion, it wasn't. But they've really been building him up to the point that he matches the Prophets in the effort they put up as a villain. Not to mention they put in a command structure for the Banished, so Atriox has presumably a lot of mini-bosses you had to face before you even get to him. This really fleshes out the Banished, showing that they have lots of intimidating and competent commanders, and that they are also the way they operate as an army. So I think these are all positive aspects that are really going to benefit them in the long run. Now, this is sort of a light negative, but I've read lore that the brutes that served under the Covenant kind of devolved when the Covenant leadership went into hiding. They started infighting against themselves, and this really led to their army being crippled. Now, again, this really questions how big of an army Atriox can really have, as there seem to be a lot of brutes that served under the Covenant. But there is an easy fix where they could say that Atriox went around and killed all the war chiefs, bringing all the brutes under his control. This could explain how all the elements of the Covenant have been defeated, and that's very important for one very big reason. Atriox's backstory doesn't justify going after the UNSC, or really explain why he'd even care about the humans. It really only explains that he hates the Covenant, and it's a huge part of this backstory, which explains that he blames them for the loss of his brothers, sending him into battles that would guarantee their deaths. Which eliminates the one reason why he would hate humanity, because they were the ones that killed a lot of his brothers, but again, it explains that he blames the Covenant for this, so he doesn't have reasons to go after the humans. Now, he did kill a lot of them on the Ark, but that wasn't because he was aiming for them. It was just that the UNSC was merely in his way, so he eliminated them for no particular reason other than they were an inconvenience to him. This leads to a big problem, as the UNSC's enemy doesn't give a crap about your existence, or to fight your faction. He doesn't have a problem with your existence. This gives your enemy zero motivations to fight you. They've been getting by on the UNSC and Banished going after the same items, but this can only provide so many coincidences. It's important to have a reason why Atriox would want the UNSC gone, because right now, all there is that they're a rival to his power, which is a big problem considering Cortana is currently taking over the entire universe. She's a much bigger threat, and supposedly as smart as he would be, he would definitely see the UNSC as an ally, or at least a potential ally. He needs a certifiably good reason why he wouldn't want to work with the UNSC. Especially a problem when it comes to narrative storytelling, as most villains that don't have a motivation, or a motivation against our hero or what they stand for, is dangerous, as it makes it so that there's no consequences of losing, and can lead to a lackluster villain, as they have no good reason to fight you. This is extremely important for them to make a change, as unless they do something, this is really going to hurt the final battle between Master Chief and Atriox, as there's no motivations behind either of their actions. I think the best way of handling this is making sure that the Master Chief and UNSC need to work with the remnants of the Old Covenant, particularly someone that Atriox wants to kill, making you and the rest of the UNSC a target for him and his vengeance. This would give a satisfying narrative for him to fight against, and a reason for you to be against him. Okay everyone, that's all I gotta say about that. I really do love the Banished, and I really hope they address these problems. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Got any questions? Leave a comment down below. With all that out of the way, Ajax out!